Welcome to my talk. So today I am Dr. Haimanti BISWAS and I'll be talking about some living coccolithophore that is living in the water column from the Indian continental shelf. So I am Dr. Haimanti. I am working for the last 15 years at the National Institute of Oceanography, Dona Paula, Goa, India. And I am basically a biologist from the heart. And I have a bachelor in botany, and then I studied oceanography, and I became a true oceanographer. And I love venturing in the sea, so I prefer calling it our planet ocean instead of planet Earth. I mostly do observations, but also spend quite a lot of time experimenting with the impacts of increasing carbon dioxide levels on marine plankton. So marine phytoplankton are my passion, and not only because they look very beautiful, but they are very important for keeping our earth not too warm. You know, they remove nearly 50 petagram of carbon from the atmosphere every year, and they convert it to organic matter, and that organic matter fuels our $1 trillion of fisheries, and a small part of the organic matter sinks down, and that can be stored for several thousands to millennium years. And this process for removing carbon dioxide from the surface ocean to the deep sea, we call as marine biological carbon pump. And as you can see, because of the anthropogenic or human interferences, we're adding a lot of excess carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. And that is why this is very important to understand the role of marine phytoplankton in global carbon cycle. As you can see in the image, the scheme which I'm showing, the marine phytoplankton, they're tiny, microscopic organisms, and they can be diverse based on their evolution, their cell type, and the size. So among them, in today's ocean, there are 4 different types of major phytoplankton. They are diatoms, dinoflagellate, coccolithophore, they calcify, and also cyanobacteria that are prokaryotic, and they are the first one to evolve. However, I am mostly a diatom lover, and most of my work was based on marine diatoms. But recently, I am scaling down to the world of nannoplankton because they are not only very beautiful, but they also do a very important work, that is carbonate pump. So they synthesize calcium carbonate within the external to the cell, and that calcium carbonate crystals that sink down. And the ratio between the calcium carbonate and the organic carbon we call as rain ratio also controls the carbon cycle and atmospheric CO2 level to a greater extent. That is why this is very important to understand how these nanoplankton, they contribute to global carbon cycle. As I told that I am recently working on marine phytoplankton, and the study area is the Arabian Sea. Many of you may not know that Arabian Sea is the northern part of the North Indian Ocean. This is a tropical basin. And as you can see in the image, there is a dashed black line that demarcates the presence of oxygen deficient waters. That is one of the deepest and permanent oxygen deficient waters in the world. And the white dash across the basin indicates a low-level Flint-Later jet that develops during the summer monsoon. This is very important to mention that this basin is very important to understand ocean atmospheric interaction, because the monsoon system controls the circulation pattern, biogeochemistry, as well as biological productivity in this basin. So how it works? During the summer monsoon, a low-level atmospheric jet develops, as you can see in the arrow, and it forms low-level atmospheric jet, and it forms open ocean upwelling as well as coastal upwelling in the here. As you can see, these are the blue marked area along the southwest coast of India where you have high phytoplankton biomass and productivity. Contrarily, during the winter monsoon, the wind reverses, ocean current also reverses, and biogeochemistry also reverses. And we have, because of the cooling, a convective mixing in the northwestern part of India that makes this part productive. So if you take a cross section of the Indian continental shelf and when we move from 8 degrees, so from the south of southwestern coast of India towards north 21 degrees, so this is this part. You can see during the summer monsoon we have upwelling. That means the atmospheric forcing pushes water mass away from the shelf, and because of that cold nutrient rich water which comes up to the surface and high phytoplankton biomass takes place. Not only that, this area also houses one of the highest fishery resources within India. And when we move northward, the water column becomes oligotrophic, high temperature and high salinity. And we have seen in our previous study the nano and picoplankton, they dominate in this area during the southwest monsoon. And during the northeast monsoon, that is winter, as I told, the situation reverses and this part becomes highly productive in the northwest, whereas the southern part becomes low productive due to low nutrient and warm temperature. And now I will talk about the paper here which we published based on the living coccolithophore from the water column. So as I told, we have done the study during the summer monsoon, that is August 2018. And these are the locations. As you can see here, the inset, we have a small map of India. And this is Eastern Arabian Sea or northwestern part of India. And we have 5 stations where we have sampled from 200-meter water depth, that is the isobag, and we used our ship RB Sindhu Sadhana. We have collected water samples from different depths. Here we will be presenting the results for 60 meter, top 60 meter. And surprisingly, we found that the total abundance of Coccolithophore was quite high in this region, which was not indicated before. If you recall my first slide, as I mentioned that the northern part of northwestern shelf is usually characterized by small plankton and oligotropy, we repeatedly found out from pigment signature that Coccolithophore may present, but that signifies largely the haptophytes. That could be also Phaeocystis, another group of non-calcifying haptophytic algae. But in this study, this confirms that Coccolithophores are an important component of planktonic community in the shelf region. Not only that, we also found that diversity is quite high. And here, when we move towards the south, the concentration of the total Coccolithophore decreased. But the diversity was highest towards the north and diversity increased toward the south. So from this, we understood that there is a high diverse and abundance of Coccolithophore living in the water column. And now then we wanted to see what they are. And as a few earlier studies, they reported the Gephyrocarpsa oceanica. This is one of the living Coccolithophore dominate the tropical Indian Ocean. So our study is consistent with that. We found out a total of 18 species of Coccolithophore from 11 genera, and they show very distinct distribution pattern from south to north within the sampling areas. And we have Gephyrocarpsa oceanica. As you can see, some they distributed in the surface water, whereas some of them they are distributed throughout the water column, and there are some they are confined only to the subsurface water. So for example, Folispira profunda species that was confined to the subsurface water, and then we try to categorize them based on their different characteristic, and we found out there are 3 groups which are distinct based on their distribution pattern. And we have done a small statistical analysis, and that indicates here that most of the Coccolithophores were associated with the availability of dissolved inorganic nitrogen, and including the dominating species Gephyrocarpsa oceanica. And here this figure which represents the dissolved oxygen level, which indicates the species like Folispira profunda were confined to the deep water where dissolved oxygen level was quite low. This is also quite interesting observation. So from the whole study, we would like to summarize that in the western continental shelf of India during the summer monsoon, we found that the high abundance of Coccolithophore are present, and this is quite diverse, and they must be contributing significantly to the carbon cycling, to food chain, and also carbon export to the sediment, but we know very little about them. And this is the first study which explains the Coccolithophore distribution in the shelf region, and the nutrient that is dissolved inorganic nitrogen was the dominating nutrient that controls their availability, and Gypaerocaps oceanica was the dominant and surface dwelling species, and other species like Polysphaera profonda and U. sibogi were dominant in the lower euphotic zone where nutrient concentrations were high, as well as the concentration of low oxygen and abundance of certain species also indicate that they must be having some special characteristic feature to calcify within that condition. But we do not know what kind of community we may expect during the northeast monsoon, and these studies are still undergoing, and we are also going to study and quantify the contribution of Coccolithophore from the surface to the sediment, how they help in carbon transport. So with this, I finish this talk. Thank you very much.